Welcome to the Penn State Show here on DK Sports Radio. Back for another week, it's your host Audrey Snyder, and I am fresh off of a media availability Wednesday night over in Holuba Hall. James Franklin met with reporters following Penn State's spring practice, and it was an interesting one. I say that because we had a chance to watch the kickers, well, at least the ones that are here, and even the offensive linemen who are not in the kicking competition. We had a chance to watch those guys kick, and that was highly entertaining because it was not very good at all. But the fact of the matter is, right now, James Franklin said Penn State really doesn't have a kicking competition. That's mainly because Carson Landis is the only kicker right now. Punter Blake Gillikin is in the mix there, but realistically, James Franklin said that, the motto has been, the theory has been all along that they want Blake Gillikin to focus on punting, and if there's a second area where Gillikin can help them, Franklin said that they've talked to a bunch of, kicking specialist gurus, and they think that second area is more so as a kickoff specialist as opposed to, of course, field goal or extra points. So that's an interesting development, mainly because Jake Pinniger gets here this summer, as does Vlad Hilling and some other walk-ons. So this competition is going to be wide open come camp. Carson Landis had a good opportunity to try and jump out ahead in that because he's the only one here. But by the sounds of it, it's certainly going to be a fall battle. Judging by just, again, very limited viewing window off of what the media saw Wednesday night, Carson Landis struggled a little bit, but again, it's a really small sample size. The coaching staff tracks all of this, so we'll have to see where that shakes out. But the other position battle that Franklin updated Wednesday night was safety. And I thought the results, or at least the results as they're coming in here, were pretty interesting. He said that if the season started today, if Penn State played a game on Saturday, that the starting safeties would be Nick Scott and Garrett Taylor. Now, Nick Scott, to me, that makes sense. I get that he's your most experienced guy of those options back there. It also then makes me question what's the learning curve been like for Lamont Wade, because that's a guy who, they moved over to safety this offseason to try and get him on the field more, to try and help make up for an area of need there. And I think long term, they're certainly going to find ways to use Lamont Wade. There's no doubt about that. The guy has too much ability not to, but it's all about fit and experience. And right now, Garrett Taylor has kind of been one of those guys that I think a lot of people have forgotten about. And I say that because this was a highly touted cornerback. When he came in here, I remember it was kind of like, John Reed, Garrett Taylor, which guy is going to be better, which one's going to play first, those kinds of things. But when Taylor got here, he was injured, was recovering from a knee injury, so then he redshirted. Then they moved him around. So, we've seen that this secondary is so deep, but now it's a matter of getting these best guys on the field. So he is one of those best guys, at least right now. Franklin did say that Aaron Monroe has been banged up. I guess he phrased it a little bit differently, so that he's been missing some practices here and there. So perhaps he's not banged up, he's just not fully available for whatever reason. But again, that competition, pretty much like all of these spots, and I think that's always the interesting thing with spring ball is, you see teams develop depth, you see them take a step forward, but nothing ever gets solved in the spring. These are 15 practices to sift through depth and figure out what you have. But I did find that note on Garrett Taylor interesting, and Taylor's progress this spring was backed when John Reed met with the media Wednesday night as well, and Franklin said, and Reed backed this as well, that if Penn State, again, if they were playing Saturday, John Reed would be out there. Now, of course, there's no need to rush him this spring as he continues recovering from that knee injury he sustained last April 1st. So this guy's beyond a year removed from the knee injury. And by all accounts, and I'll have a story up on the site tonight about how Reed said he's, confident in the fact that he's going to come back better than he was before, that he's been working on a lot of different drills and balancing exercises during his rehab, things that he said, freshman John Reed won't be able to do some of these things that he's doing right now. So that's certainly a promising sign. But Reed also did attest to the fact that Garrett Taylor has, always stayed positive through this. This isn't I'm sure, we haven't had a chance to talk to Garrett Taylor yet, but I'm sure when we will, I guarantee that this college experience for him hasn't gone as expected for him. It's been up and down. He's waited a long time for this opportunity, but that's another name now that you really have to keep in mind moving forward. The other development, at least kind of my big three from Wednesday night, was how's Micah Parsons doing at middle linebacker? Well, James Franklin said that, they're trying to get him comfortable, that Micah Parsons right now doesn't even have a stance that he's comfortable in because, well, that makes sense. The guy hasn't played linebacker before. But he did say that they moved Micah Parsons over to the will linebacker spot. Now, they view both of their box backers as interchangeable. Obviously, what this does is this lessens the load on Parsons in terms of, being the quarterback of the defense, at least for the time being. Again, it's April. We'll have to see. They always want their linebackers to know all three positions, but, with a young guy, you got to start slow, and that certainly seems to be what they're doing there. So we'll have to see, who is that middle linebacker. Can you move Cam Brown there if ultimately that ends up being, your best option? I don't know. We're going to have to see kind of how many different pairings, different combinations they tinker with, because that to me is the big spot. All of these other things, the safety battle and whatnot, to me, those aren't going to matter as much if you can't get this thing righted. And that starts with the middle linebacker. Of course, the front four, got to get that situated a little bit. But Rob Windsor was out there Wednesday night practicing. So that's certainly a positive sign that he's been out there, because you look at the defensive tackles and it's Rob Windsor and Kevin Givens as your top two. So interesting night over in Haluba Hall, and I'll have plenty of stories, analysis, and whatnot up on the site. By the time you're hearing this Thursday morning, there should be plenty of content there. But when we come back, we're going to mix it up and talk a little Penn State hoops, specifically Tony Carr departing for the NBA. When we come back here on the Penn State Show on DK Sports Radio.
Miller Lite is the original light beer, and we'll always brew it to have more taste, with only 96 calories and 3.2 carbs. Because we believe that if you compromise on taste, you can taste the compromise. Miller Lite. Hold true.
Great beer, great responsibility. 2018 Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Average analysis, 12 fluid ounces. Less than 1 gram protein, 0 grams fat.
If you're one of the thousands of Western Pennsylvanians who love to get outdoors, then you need to check out this cool new website, stepoutside.org. Learn where, when, and how you can go camping, hiking, or hunting, or take part in power sports, shooting sports, or water sports in your local community or across the country at stepoutside.org, where everything you need to know is just a click away. That's stepoutside.org.
What I want from my public accounting firm is big ideas.
But I don't want to lose the personal attention.
My company needs global capabilities.
From a firm with local ownership.
And I want to work with industry experts.
Who take the time to understand my unique challenges. And that's what sets Snyder Downs apart. Expertise for the most complex business issues. With the service you need every day. To learn how our big thinking with a personal focus can help your company, visit SnyderDowns.com.
Injured in an accident? Need assistance in preserving your business's interests? Let the attorneys at Bassey, Vreeland & Associates protect your legal rights. For over 65 years, Bassey, Vreeland & Associates has been representing the citizens and businesses of southwestern Pennsylvania. With offices strategically located in Washington and Charleroi, Bassey, Vreeland & Associates can deliver results for you throughout the Pittsburgh area. Visit www.bmvlaw.com or call 724-228-7000 to see how Bassey, Vreeland & Associates can meet your legal needs. Bassey, Vreeland & Associates. We fight, we care, we win.
Welcome back to the Penn State Show here on DK Sports Radio with your host, Audrey Snyder. It was all news and views in the first part of the show about Penn State football, and now let's talk a little Penn State hoops. The Nittany Lions took down Utah last week to secure the program's second NIT overall big take-home-the-prize victory. Really, it was a great moment for Penn State and kind of seeing this program come together and take what definitely was another step forward under Pat Chambers. However, as has seemingly been the case here, not even with Chambers' tenure, but beyond that, whenever this team seems to take a step forward, then there's inevitably a step back. And Tony Carr announced this week that he will go to the NBA. He'll declare after his sophomore season, and he intends to sign with an agent. So that, of course, is the part where it becomes binding. Once you sign with an agent, you give up your NCAA eligibility. And that's what surprised me most about Tony Carr's decision. And I say that because I expected that he would have tested the NBA waters to some extent, but I didn't expect that he would come out and kind of bet on himself so much right away and say, yes, I'm not just testing the waters. I'm signing with an agent, and that's that. So, you have to wonder what this means for the Penn State team, and they still return a lot of pieces. Don't get me wrong there. I mean, you look at, okay, yes, they're losing Tony Carr, you're losing senior Shep Garner, but Lamar Stevens put together a really impressive run during the NIT, and he really had, we saw a lot of flashes, a lot of really solid games from Lamar Stevens this year, where you think, okay, that's going to be a bigger piece. Of course, getting Mike Watkins healthy, that'll be huge. But, it's also bizarre that this could become part of the new normal in State College where, like everywhere else, basketball players declare early for the NBA. Sitting there during Tony Carr's availability on Monday afternoon in the Bryce Jordan Center, I asked one of the veteran beat writers, I'm like, have I missed something? Has this ever happened before where Penn State has had a player declare early, a basketball player declare early for the NBA draft? And he said, no, definitely not. But, this is certainly could be the wave of things to come. I mean, if Lamar Stevens has a good year next year, who's to say that you see him for a senior year? The way Mike Watkins has performed, got to imagine that he'll test the NBA waters at some point. That's just the reality of college sports. That's the reality of college basketball, especially. But that to me was the surprising thing about Carr. I understand in athletics, and it is so foreign in many ways the way a lot of these athletes are wired, that they're always going to bet on themselves. They have the utmost confidence, and I get it. That's what makes them great at what they do. They have to have that. But at some point, when Carr's sitting up there, saying that he's going to go to the league and he's going to sign with an agent, I'm just thinking, man, if this guy gets hurt between now and June, there goes that window. There goes that chance to, make the money, this life-altering decision. I mean, there's certainly a risk involved here when you look at mock drafts for Tony Carr, and Carr said that he was told, and Pat Chambers said that they were both told that anywhere from, middle to the end of the first round, potentially the second round. So you look at this, there's really no guarantee ever in any draft, but you look at Carr, it's always hard to knock a kid for his decision. And hey, I've never walked a mile in Tony Carr's shoes, so I'm not going to say I pretend to know what it's like to be him, to kind of live his life, to make these decisions. But to me, that was the one thing that I thought was certainly interesting, a little bit bizarre about the decision. But as the guy showed this year, I mean, he is a big-time basketball player. We saw it in the big games, especially in the big moments. And I asked Tony, I said, did your college career, because he was only here for not even a full 2 years, 2 seasons, did these 2 seasons here kind of go according to plan for you? And he said that it did. I mean, of course, everybody comes in here with the vision of winning a championship, albeit an NIT one as opposed to an NCAA tournament berth, certainly different. But Carr said, the NBA, this was his dream. This has always been his dream, his goal. And I thought it was pretty telling, too, that Pat Chambers said that they didn't want to get in the way of Tony Carr's dreams of playing in the NBA. They didn't want to be selfish about this. He was very open and honest with Carr and with Carr's parents about, hey, if this is what you guys want to do, we'll support you. So, again, we will see what the offseason holds for Penn State basketball. the name to know right now is Miles Dredd. That's the freshman all-met honoree who's coming in. So they will need to get some mileage out of Miles Dredd next year in life after Tony Carr. And it also should make for, really interesting time in the lead up to the NBA draft as these mock drafts continue to swirl, as Carr works out, kind of see, ultimately if this ends up being the right move for him. But hey, he's all in. He's confident about it. Good for him. And we will see what happens. We will do this again next week here on the Penn State Show on DK Sports Radio. As always, feel free to leave your comments, questions, concerns, whatever you have in the comments section below, and I will be sure to get to those next time. Until then, take care.